Begin the current Daf Mesechtes Yevamos Daf. We begin 25 lines down at the top of the Yomim. We're in the middle of a discussion over here regarding the bias pesulais of this parak Malakah and Gadol, regarding what's considered an invalid invalidation. The Gemara goes back to explain a brisa which relates to the halacha of the Mishnah regarding that of a 9-year-old, what type of bia his bia is going to be psula because he's already reached the age of bia. Shit corresponds to Kazakh and the Cheskel turn into Daf Yomi today's Daf. Thank you everyone who came to the brisas today for the new baby Shmuel. Greatly appreciate it. Share together of simchas. Some things we're discussing today's daf are regarding the individuals, as we mentioned the Mishnah. They're poisim. That's really the theme of these Mishnayos. That these individuals are actually the worst of both. When it comes to a bas kohen liyisrael, that she's going to be problematic with these individuals. And even though she was able to teach him up until now, whereas a bas kohen is the other way around, that she was not able to, and you would think that when she gets married to a kohen, you'd be able to. These individuals will be loy machas. That's the two halachas of peisim loy machilin. We're all the way skipping down to further down into the daf of the brisa that we quoted on the previous daf. Gufa says the Gemara. This is 25 lines down at the top of the Yomim. We learned Ben Tes Shana B'Yemechan. When you have a 9-year-old and 1 day old, basically a 9-year-old, that's Ger Amoini, Amoini Ger or Mayavi, which we explained already on a few lines up from these words from the previous daf, that these individuals are all puzzled to come into the kilo, or Mitzri Vadomi. That's up until 3 generations. Kuti, Rashi explained that was an Akum Nasan. The Cholol, Mamzir, these are individuals, we already explained this a few lines up, that they're all psulim. Shabal, Kehenes, Levi, V'Yisraelis. If they had relations with a Kehenes, Levi, V'Yisraelis, any one of them, Pesalon, it's going to make them possible, which Rashi explains, if she's a Bas Kohen, it's going to invalidate her from Truma. If she's a Levi, V'Yisraelis, it's going to make her, she wasn't able to have Truma anyway, but it's going to make her problematic that she cannot marry a Kohen forever. That's the Tanakh. Now, Rabbi Shloimy, he says, words that we're going to have to explain later on. Kol shazare pasal. If the children are pasal, then pasal, that's the type of man that makes the woman pasal. Because she'ain zare pasal, if his children are not pasal, ain't a pasal, he won't make the woman pasal. Now that sounds just like the Tanakh in a way. Isn't that usually the way it is? If you're a pasal, then your children are pasal, and if not. So what would that be different than the Tanakh? Then there's Rabbi Shloimy Schwartzberg. He says, anyone that you marry the daughter, then you can marry his widow. So it's really saying it in a backwards way, meaning we're talking about kohanim. The Tanakh was saying, which man's bia would make her pasal for kahuna? So now the Rishon is like talking to the kohen. If you could marry that man's daughter, you could marry his widow, meaning she did not become pasal. If you cannot marry his daughter, you cannot marry his widow, which the Gemara is going to explain exactly what are these different opinions. What's the reason of Rabbi Shimon? We'll explain this on the next Daf. What are they saying? And what is their machlekes with the Tanakh? First says the Gemara, where do we know this concept from? That a bia pesula could invalidate someone from kahuna, whether it be kohenes from Chumo or Levi Yisraelis from marrying a kohen. So I'm going to read the Murad. It says Amakar, the pasuk says in Meikra. Pasuk says Ubas kohen, the daughter of a kohen, kisi leishdar, when she's going to be with a foreign man. So the pasuk there concludes, she cannot eat from Chuma anymore. Says the Gemara, what is this teaching us? Once she has bia to someone that's pasal to her, so pasla, it invalidates her from Chuma. That's what the pasuk is saying. When she's seal is her, so then she cannot have b'chuma Says the Gemara, what are you talking about? You need this pasuk for something else, not to say that you become pasal forever when you have a bia with a pasal person. You need it because the Kamar Achman, the Torah is telling you, Bas Kohen de Mitzvah Lazar. When the daughter of a Kohen is married to a Zar, she cannot eat. That's not a halacha of having bia with a bia psula of a pasal person. To the contrary, when she's not married to him anymore, she could be b'shavel b'sevir. Like with this week's parasha, she should go back to her father's household. Where do you see the halacha when she has bia with a pasal that she becomes pasal olam? Says the Gemara, no, that halacha is in the next pasuk. It says from mi b'shavel b'sevir kinureha. She goes back to her father's household like she was in her youth. Now she could eat from her father's bread. That's when nafka. That's where we learn that out, as the Gemara explains. mean, the Kamrach from the fact that Torah tells you that she goes back to her father's house so she could eat truma. The inference is originally when she was married to her non-Kohen husband, she cannot eat. So then what do you need from the pasuk of Kisi Le'Zar? That must be telling you a different concept. Not when you're married, because that I can infer from Mishal Beis Aviyah. The first part of Kisi Le'Zar is telling you that when she has Bia with a puzzle, it's going to make her puzzle forever. Says, well, wait, it's not true. You still need both. Because Imahi, if you only had the second pasuk, I would have said, that's what's called a lava bo machlal aseh. It's a negative prohibition derived from a positive, meaning that if you're reading it only from V'shalom Beis Aviyah, that's a positive directive. It's telling you what you can do now, which the inference is up until now you couldn't. But that's only an aseh. Because Rachmana Haida tried to write the first part, lelav, to tell you a negative prohibition, loy toichel, that you cannot eat. You wouldn't know it. You would only know an aseh. So how can you tell me that the first one telling you this halacha bi b'sula? Maybe it's still telling you only the halacha of marriage to a zar, and to tell you there's a negative prohibition. Says Gemara, no, lav, a negative prohibition is the psukim before that. Which, as Rashi explains, right now the Gemara assumes that the Tana holds that a bas koyin, you could also learn that from the pasuk of v'chol zor lo yichal kodesh, because since she's married to a zar, married to Yisrael, she's like a zar. That I already know from a lav lo yoichel of a negative prohibition of when you're married to the Yisrael, because it says v'chol zor lo yichal kodesh. So the Gemara says, what are you talking about? That you need for the halacha itself of the simple translation for a bona fide zar. But here the woman's not a zara; she's a bas kohen. You need to tell you that a bas kohen is going to be aser. That's what you need the other pasuk for, because you wouldn't know it from the chol zar leichel kodesh. You need to have the bas kohen kisiya. You need le'ishdar that you need to have. You wouldn't know it from v'shavah beis avigdor. I won't tell you asay. And the loisa say you can't tell me b'chol zar because it has to tell you a bona fide intrinsic zar. Here she's not a bona fide zar. She's only married to a zar. So therefore the Gemara is still with the question to say, how do you know that kisi is teaching you this halacha bi b'sula? Says the Gemara no trei b'chol zar ksibi. It says 2 times b'chol zar. As Rashi brings in Vayikuchav Beis, v'chol zar lo yichal kodesh, the pasuk we bring up until now. And also by Bas Kohen it says v'shava el etc. Milechem v'yatoichel v'chol zar lo yichal boy. And from here is where we learn out a negative prohibition for Bas Kohen that's married to Yisrael to make it forbidden when she's married to her husband for truma. But then again, so you have 2. So you already know a law for a Bas Kohen that's married to a zar. What's the other v'chol zar? Oh, that's teaching you of this of the lezar. That's teaching you this halacha of the biyapsula, and that's how we know the source. Says no, but you still need it. You don't have it extra to teach you this halacha biyapsula. Look at Rabbi Chanina, which his teaching is brought in the next parak and parak oral, which is it needs to permit you an oinin for truma. An oinin is someone who, Tais actually discusses regarding their abundant, their raisa, but if someone lost a relative that day, to say that they're permitted truma, this you know from this pasuk that you're claiming you're bringing to tell me the halacha bi b'sula. Because the Omer B'ris B'chanini says, it says in the Torah, b'chol zar. What's b'chol zar lo yichal kodesh? Zar is amarti lach. What did I tell you cannot eat truma? That's a zar, and it's coming to exclude v'lo yaninas. So how can you tell me from Ubas Kohen? How can you tell me from the pasuk of zar that, in other words, you have one zar to tell me that it's teaching you the halacha of the zar cannot eat truma, and therefore you have the other one to teach you a different halacha. Maybe we said we have 2 psukim, but you need the zars to tell you that it's going to be only by zar and not a ninas. So you can't tell me that you have 2 psukim, and therefore each one is teaching me something else, and you have one for the lav of a bas kohen that's married to a zar. No, you need kisi lezar to teach you that. Why not? I thought it says 2 b'chol zars. Yeah, but that other b'chol zar is not there an extra one to teach you this halacha. You need that zar to tell me that it's only a zar that's problematic and not an oinen. So you still don't have an extra pasuk for when she's married to a zar to tell me the negative prohibition. You need kisi lezar to teach you that halacha, and therefore you don't have an extra one because you needed to teach me v'lo aninas. Says the Gemara, no. Again, there's like a cheshbon and calculation of hot and cup where all these lemudim are from. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Yisrael Chanina min zar v'chol zar nafka. No, you can still learn out the halacha of a woman married to a Yisrael that she's puzzled because that zar has two limudim. There's the zar, which is zar amarti lech v'lo, and there's the b'chol zar. The word b'chol is teaching me this halacha of both. Not only the woman who's married to the zar, but also it's only zaras and not anenas. But says the Gemara, no, vakati. Still, now going back to the Bas Kohen Kisiya, which you're telling me you're learning out to be a psula from, no, mi bayale. You need it to teach you when it's a full-fledged marriage, to tell you that when she goes back to her father's household from the death of her husband, and she doesn't have children from him, but that she doesn't go back to her father's household to now still eat the karbanas he would get, the chazan, the shayka, the shlamim, to eat like all of her other siblings that they eat, like it says, that's what you need it for. Like it's done, like Linda Bryson. When she goes back to her father's household, when her husband dies and there's no children, she goes back for truma, but in the she does not go back for chazan. How do you know this? Rabbi Shloimy says, Micah, what's the pasuk? Because the Sivit says in the pasuk, Ubas Kohen. This pasuk that we're learning out from, the halacha bi psula, that a woman becomes invalidated when she has relations with a mitzriya, doimi, or any one of these psulim should become apostle. The pasuk that we brought is the pasuk that bring over here, Bas Kohen, Kisi leish zar, when she is with a foreign man, he betrumas hakadashim leisaychel. She in the trumas hakadashim cannot eat. What does that mean? Betrumas hakadashim leitaychel b'moichim min hakadashim. She cannot eat from that which is elevated from the kachim. What's the elevated parts? It's the chaz and the shaykh, the breast and the thigh that goes to the kahanim. So we're saying that once she is with an ish zar, that's it. She can't, even if she doesn't have children from him, she can't go back. So you tell me you're learning out from this halacha of the ish zar for the halacha of that she becomes possible betrumas hakadashim. So how can you tell me that you have the extra ish zar to teach you the halacha of bi psula? No, it's still teaching you about the marriage halacha. I thought I already know that. Yeah, but it has to tell you that specifically even when she could go back, but she doesn't go back to eating the kachim of her father, only to the truma. So the Gemara finishes off this cheshbon by saying, no, it's not difficult, because in King, if that would be the case, like Tais explains, that if the pasuk was only coming to teach you regarding truma, so then that's like we were explaining, and there's teaching regarding bi psula, and not this halacha of chaz v'shayk, then lichtav kra, the pasuk should have just written, he b'kadashim leisaychel, she should not eat the holy things. Because like Tais explains, although kadashim we usually translate in our head as karbanas, that whole parsha talking about truma, and truma is also called kadashim. So it should have just said b'kadashim leisaychel. My b'trumas hakadashim, what's the extra trumas? Shomna tarti, we learn out both. We learn out that it's also teaching you for moirim and hakadashim, that's the trumas hakadashim, also that which is the chaz v'shayk. But again, the primary pasuk is teaching this halacha of the bia psula, that once she has relations nothing with marriage, the ishzar, the moment she has a bia psula with this puzzle, it's going to make her invalid for truma or for the kuna. And again, it's also teaching you that of the halacha when she is married to a zar, and when she goes back, she doesn't go back totally. She can't go back to the moedim and kadashim, to the chaza and the shaykh. Okay, that was a long way of technically going through showing how that pasuk is necessary. I mean, it's not extra. It's extra. It's not necessary for other things, and that's the source how we know bia besula. But says the Gemara, you still didn't show me that much. Ashkechan kehenes. All that you really showed me was that a kehenes becomes possible of a truma with a bia besula, because that's what it's talking about. The pasuk was uvas koin kisi lezah. That's all you have that you showed me was a bas kohen. Yes, it's not talking about marriage, because that I know from somewhere else. I even know the law from somewhere else. So it was teaching me regarding bia besula. But you still didn't tell me Levi Yisrael's Manola. How do we know a Levi and the Israelis that she becomes apostle with a bia besula? I only know a bas kohen. It says the Gemara the Rabba Amarav, which is brought in Perik Yesh Mutaris. Bas ubas, just like over there for that drasha that he's handling. He says it could have said bas, and it says uvas, the extra vav. So Chanami here also bas ubas. So it says uvas kohen. What's uvas kohen? What's uvas? What and what? Just say bas kohen. Oh, the extra and is a riboy coming to include also the Yevamos Daf. Says, well, wait a second. Come on, who's that like? Seems to be going to Rabbi Kiva. It's going like Rabbi Kiva, the Davish Vavin, because he expounds the Vavin in Sanhedrin and Daf Yomi base. So similarly, it's going like Rabbi Kiva. Says it's going like Rabbanan, because Kule uvas kro yiseru. The whole word uvas is extra. Why? Because Rashi explains. The pasuk previously said, Kohen kikna nefesh. The Kohen's going to acquire a soul. V'lid beisay, and those who are in his house could eat to truma. So you could have just said afterwards, and v'chisi lizah, but when his daughter goes to an izar, you don't have to write ubas Kohen. We're talking about v'lid beisay. We're talking about his family members. Just say, and when she goes to izar. Oh, from the extra ubas, the whole word, so it doesn't have to be like Rabbi Kiva, it could be like even the Rabbanon, the whole word is extra. Says he, okay, he's still not finished yet. Ashkechon the truma, you brought me a source for truma. Because that's what the pasuk is saying. He b'truma sakadish leiseichel. That's what the pasuk was saying. When you have bi psula, you can't have any more truma. But lekuhuna, to say that she cannot marry a kohen anymore once a apostle has be with her, Minol, where do you know that from? So the Gemara says, what do you mean? Hatu leviv Israelis. We just brought a source from the extra word of vas. So what's the extra word of vas come to teach me? Leviv Israelis. Isn't that loy lekuhuna rabbinan lahu? Isn't that what we're including them, that they're apostle for getting married to Kuhuna? Because they in truma, everything they read for Levi Israelis was for truma, but nice mecha truma nenu. What do you mean? They're not daughters of a kohen. What do you think? What do you think they had up until now? That they were apostle from eating truma. So obviously, it's the bi psula is invalidating not only from truma but also for Kuhuna, because that's the riba for Levi Israelis. It's only regarding marrying a kohen. Says Gemara, what do you mean? Allah malay. What do you mean? Why can't you say it was for truma? But mishkachas lo, you could have a riba for Levi Israelis for truma too. How? To ka'achla b'shva b'na. When she was eating because of her son. Meaning you need to tell me that if, let's say, she was married at one point to Kohen, the Kohen husband died, and she has a son from the Kohen, where if she has beer with apostle, it makes her forbidden from truma. Who said it's anything to do with marrying Kohen? Levi Israelis, who is Levi Israelis, but she's eating because of her son. Says Gemara, b'shva b'na? Because of her son? No, that can't be. Because Kabul Chaymer, I wouldn't need Bas, Ubas to include the baby Israelis. That would have enough from a Kabul Chaymer that should be possible from Truma. If you tell me so much Truma. Why? Because a Makahan is if we find by a Bas Kain. The Bekedusha, the Nafsha Achel, when she eats Truma, she's eating it from her own intrinsic physical rights as a Bas Kain that she eats it. And still, you tell me pasala. The pasuk says a Bas Kain le'ishzir, when she has be with a pasala, it's going to make her invalid. So Levi Israelis. No, she's only eating truma because of her son. She doesn't really have that much rights. Like Kalkin isn't all the more so for sure she can be possible. Would it be a psula from eating truma? I wouldn't need a riboy of a bas. Obviously, the riboy of a bas is coming to teach her regarding kuhuna. So what's your question? I have a source for kuhuna. Says Gemara, no, it's not true. Beyond the sentence. To the contrary, you need to have a riboy because the kavachayim that you're learning out that would be asr for the Viv Israelis is actually contrarily the reasoning why it would be permitted for the Israelis and not awesome. Because Kohenes, the Kaddish Gufa, that has a physical holiness, Pasala. Yeah, the more holy things are, the more pigam there is. So when she has to be with a apostle, that's going to make a apostle. But over here, the Levi Israelis, like Kaddish Gufa, it doesn't have a physical sanctity. Loi Pasala. To the contrary. That's, he understands, that's the reason why it should not be a problem. Don't tell a Kabul Chaymer. If anything, the other way around, I would say, no, you do need a riboy because she doesn't have physical sanctity, so she doesn't become so apostle when she has to be with an apostle. So how do you know a source for kahuna? I can tell the riboy of Levi Israelis is only regarding the halacha of truma too. Says Gemara, Eli, you're right. The apostle for the kahuna is a kavachem grusha. It's a kavachem from grusha. What is? Uma grusha, just like we see a grusha in the Torah, the woman who was divorced. She's permitted to eat truma if she's married. Let's say she was a bas kohen, and she gets divorced. She's not married anymore, and doesn't have any. She goes right back to where she was. She could eat truma. Grusha is allowed to eat truma. Why not? But asula kuna, we know everyone knows in the Torah, grusha b'chalutzala, they're not allowed to marry a grusha. So this woman who had bia to someone that's possible for her. You told me you brought a source already. Isha kisil isha. Lo, yeah, she can't go ahead and eat from B'truma Kachon Le'Seichel. So in the Densha B'sul Lakuna, isn't it a Kabul that she can pass Lakuna? Because a Grusha could eat Truma, can't marry a Kohen. For sure, this woman that would be a B'sul can have Truma for sure, and not marry a Kohen. Says, what do you mean? Do you think you could create a negative prohibition from a Kabul Chaymer to make it a bona fide negative prohibition? But the Gemara tells the Makas of Yitzhak basic, what's called Emas Even Adin. So what do you tell me? It's a Kabul Chaymer to say that's going to be forbidden. You can't make a negative prohibition from a Kabul Chaymer. Says Gemara, no, it's not a Kabul Chaymer. It's a Gila Milsa Ba'amahu. It's just revealing to us. Not really learning out a negative prohibition for marrying a Kohen from the Truma. Because like Rashi says, it's just memela that since you tell me she's possible for truma, obviously she's possible for kuna. Because truma is the kedusha of the kuna. So I'm not really learning out. It's just basically revealing a fact that of course if you can't have truma, then of course you can't go ahead and marry a kohen. As you see by grusha, where she can even go ahead and have truma, she can't marry a kohen. If you're possible for truma, then you're most definitely possible for the kuna. That was the source for this halacha we brought in the previous daf regarding a Levi, Israelis, for Kehenis that have beer with anyone in the psulim that they're possible for truma and the possible for kahuna. But says the Gemara the following question: Ve'ema nivala lepasla. Maybe say you had taught me the source for the halacha from the pasuk of Askoin Kisi le'Izdar, which we said I don't need it to teach me that. As a simple translation, the pasuk seems to be talking about marriage. Because I already know that from somewhere else, from the next pasuk, like we said, b'shabal b'saviyah, even though negative proposition from somewhere else. Okay, so teach me be a psula. But this Izar, maybe say nivala pasala is only chiva krisis. Maybe say it's only, let's say, if her brother had be with her, incest. Oh, that's it. You become pasal from the truma of your father's household. But a chiva lavin, since kedushin is teifus, who said that's going to make her pasal? So Kuti, Nasin, Mamzer, all those individuals that you mentioned, the Brisa, how do you know it's going to make her apostle when she has to be with this apostle? It's only Chival Avin. Who said that's going to be qualified for the Ijdar? So the Gemara says, I'll tell you why. Read the pasuk. The pasuk says, Kisiya Amar Achmana. First thing, when there's going to, Kisiya, what's Kisiya? We know throughout Shas, the Gemara always tells us that the word Siya is Hanach de Isbuhu Havaya. Havaya means the ultimate existence, which is a terminology for kedushin, which is marriage, which is connection. So, from the fact that it's referring to the bia, like we said, simple translation actually sounds like it's not talking about bia. Simple translation sounds like when you're married to a zar, so then you can't need truma, which we said that can't be what it's talking about, because that I know from somewhere else. So we said it must be extra to teach you the halacha of bia. Yeah, but why are you using the terminology of siya, which connotes kedushin, when you're really referring to bia? Obviously, because you're talking about those types of men that there would be kedushin with them, and still it's going to be puzzle. Chayva krisis labnei. So you can't tell me he's talking about chayva krisis because there's no marriage. Kedushin is not teifus and chayva krisis. Obviously, it's even by nasin and mamzer, even though it's only chayva labnei kedushin teifus. To the contrary, the pasuk is telling me kisiya when there is going to be kedushin, still it's going to have this halacha. Which the Gemara says, wait a second. Now I could ask you the other way around. If that's the case, then say that the pasuk is specifically by those who do have kedushin teifus. Could you tell me that's kisiya means? So then, by Oivik and Eved, then actually it should not be pasuk. Which Rashi says that same thing. Right? The Gemara could have said chiva krisis also should not be pasuk. Because that's the main point of the question. Tell me, Kisiya, when there's going to be kedushin, then she becomes possible in truma. Sounds like only when kedushin is teifus. It's not really only by Evan and Eved Kechavim, it's even by Chiva Krisis. So why are we picking specifically Evan and Eved Kechavim? That's because that the Bryce itself spoke about those cases. It spoke about a kuti, which Rashi understands that means Eved Kechavim. And the Mishnah later on, the Samachtes base tells us that Eved is invalidates because of his bia. And Eved Kanani doesn't have kedushin like it says in Bereshis im hachamor, which means am hadoim al chamor, and Eved Kechavim also doesn't have kedushin like it says in Sadan Navnon Beis and Beis, it says Eishes Re'ei, which excludes Eishes Akum. So be that as it may, it's not specifically according to Rashi that of Eved and Eved Kechavim, but again they're just individuals that kedushin is not teifus until the chiva krisis. So maybe say that to the contrary, maybe their bia actually would not be poisel. Because kedusha is not teifus, maybe only when kedusha is teifus, when there's going to be kisiya, like you're including, maybe only then would there be a paisel, and actually maybe Evan and Kechavim their bia would not pasul. Says the Gemara, no, it's not true. Hana of pasim there be shmal. It's clear that Evan and Kechavim that their bia would pasul, would invalidate the woman from Rabbi Shloimy. Because Rabbi Shloimy says, how do we know regarding a non-Jew or a slave? Shabbat Yisrael, if they have relations with any one of the Jewish women, Shepaslu and invalidates them. Because it says in the pasuk in Vayikra, it says the Vaskoyin Kisiya Almona V'Grusha V'Goyim. There's going to be a daughter of a kohen, a widow or divorced. So the pasuk there concludes, etc. The pasuk continues and says, and she doesn't have any children, so she's going to go back to her father's household like she was in her youth. The bread of her father she could eat but when she's married to these individuals, she cannot. Now, continues the Gemara on top of Salach Testament out. What are you learning out from this pasuk? Mishi yesh le'almonas v'gerushin ba. Only a man that she could be widowed and divorced from has the halacha that she could go back to her father's household. That excludes the non-Jew and the slave. She doesn't get widowed and then get divorced from her, which is the same like chiba krisis, meaning that you never were married to be widowed and divorced. That the pasuk is telling you that she'll not go back al beis avia. She won't have the halacha. She's gonna be totally puzzled because only those that have a man's gerush, and here you don't have that. Says the Gemara, okay, wait, Ashkichan Kehanis. Really only have a source for Kehanis that Eved's going to make it possible, because that's what the pasuk told me. Because it Vas Kayin. So we're back to the question like we said in the previous Daf regarding the other categories. But now regarding those that Kedushin not Taifis, you can't use that pasuk of Kisiya because we said that connotes Kedushin. So now you're back to the question. So Levi B'Shrez, how do we know Levi B'Shrez regarding this category of like Chiba Krisis and of Eved and of Gechav? So the Gemara, that's Kedom Rabbi Abba, like we said in the previous discussion. Bas ubas. Again, from the extra bas. Achanami bas ubas. Says the Gemara, come on, Kerib Akiva, the Darsh Bavi. Says the Gemara, no, I felt timid Rabban, give it like Rabbanan. Because Kulo vas Krayiseru, that whole word of vas is extra, meaning in this pasuk too. Because as Rashi explains, because the previous pasuk said, uvas kayin. So already spoke about bas kayin. So you could have just said, the Chisi Amanagusha, when she could be Amanagusha. Already know it's talking about bas kayin. Why does it say uvas kayin? It's extra to tell me that it's not only by a bas kayin, but it's even by a Leviah and the Yisraelis. But now the Gemara ends off with a question. It says, wait a second. Ve'ema, I could tell you the exact opposite of what you're telling me. I could tell you, a man where a woman can be widowed and divorced from, meaning that Kedushin is taifis. Then kiles leizera, when there's no children, ka'achla, then she goes back to her father's household to eat the truma that she used to do when she was a single girl. Oh, but ki is leizera, when she has children from that man, the Yisrael, Kedushin is taifis. Lo yachla, then you're right, when she's married to him, she cannot eat. But Misha ain't la'amanas v'gerushin ba. But maybe a man that Kedushin not taifis a eved of Gecham that there's no widow and being divorced from. I can tell you, avagav de is leizera, that even when there is children, because again the pasuk is really talking about two things. The pasuk is talking about when she's married to him and there's no children, she goes back to her father's household. So there's talking about two things. When she has children, however, she does not go back. So maybe instead of telling me that it's telling me that the eved of Gechavim does not have the halacha of going back to her father's house when there's no children, and it's teaching me that a bia psula of those who Kedushin not taifis is going to be always problematic, maybe I could tell you no, the other way around. That someone that does not have a monzam gerushin ba, which is ever have kachavim, avgav the is leizera. To the contrary, the opposite extreme, even when there are children, nami teichel, she could also go back to her father's house and eat, because like Rashi says, he's like a behemoth. It's like there was no bia even done over here. Maybe that's what it's referring to, and maybe it's actually a kula. So the Gemara in Canaan, that would be the case, that this pasuk is a kula, and it's coming to tell you that the zera of Eved Gechav and Eved would not make a puzzle. So then ribuye Leviah b'Yisraelis lamali. Then why do you need the ribuy of Leviah b'Yisraelis? You told me it says uvas, an extra pasuk to teach you Leviah b'Yisraelis. But wait a second. If you tell me the Kahanis herself is not going to be puzzled with the zera of Gechav and Eved, so do I need to teach you? And that's what the pasuk is telling me. You tell me. So do I need to tell you Leviah b'Yisraelis? Obviously, it's a stringency, and it's telling me that it's going to be puzzled even if, meaning it's going to tell me that she's puzzled when she's a Kehanis, and tell me even she's going to be puzzled even when she's not a Kehanis. Thank you to any time for hosting us.